West Virginia is not a large state, roughly the size of Ireland, folded into the Appalachian Mountains at the country's eastern edge. Most people pass through it on the interstate, a river gorge, some ridgelines, a sign that says, "Almost Heaven." But inside those mountains, there is a buried civilization. More than 60 coal towns were built along a single 12-mile stretch of the New River Gorge alone. Most no longer exist. One sits 700 feet above the river, so inaccessible the National Park Service rarely visited it for decades. One has spring daffodils that bloom every April from the rubble, planted by residents more than a century ago, marking home sites that no longer exist. One was home to a coal baron who had orchestras transported up the gorge on railroad flat cars for Sunday concerts. And number 1 on this list has fewer than 5 residents, all elected officials, and still receives Amtrak trains on certain days. These are the 15 ghost towns in West Virginia even locals have stopped looking for. Let's go. Number 15. Whipple, the store that owned you. In Fayette County, the Whipple Company store was built in 1890 as the nerve center of its coal camp. It sold food, clothing, and tools. It housed the camp doctor's office. Miners weren't paid in dollars. They were paid in scrip, company currency redeemable only at that store. You worked for the company, bought from the company, saw the company doctor when you got injured. The same building managed most of what your life required. When the coal ran out, the store was abandoned and left standing. The brick structure is still there in a forested Fayette County hollow, slowly deteriorating. No marked trail, no NPS signage, not a formal visitor site. The company owned the miners only as long as it needed them. When it didn't, it left. The building stayed because nobody needed to take it. Number 14. Fire Creek, the brick town that burned out. Most coal companies in the New River Gorge built their towns from wood, fast, cheap, temporary, because everyone understood the coal would eventually run out. Fire Creek, one of the gorge's first coal camps, established in 1873, made a different choice. Its community buildings were built from brick. The people who lived there made a different choice too. They organized. They struck against the company in 1880. The strike failed. The post office closed in 1947. The rail depot came down about 10 years after that. Today, only foundation remnants survive within the national park's boundaries. No marked trail reaches the site. The forest has come back completely. They built to last and fought to stay. Neither one changed the outcome. Number 13, Claremont, where the daffodils still bloom. 3 miles south of Thurmond, established in 1887, Claremont once held around 600 residents, roughly half of them black, along a narrow strip of flat land between the New River and the gorge wall. 2 schools, 2 churches, a 2-story company store, 30 coke ovens, over 1 million tons of coal extracted across the town's lifespan. The structures are gone now. The foundations are gone. The cemetery is largely unmarked. Here's the thing. Every spring, daffodils bloom from the rubble. Miners planted them beside their homes, and the bulbs have been reproducing in place for over a century. No map survives, no layout. But each April, the flowers return to their exact original locations, marking home sites in an empty forest, to no audience in particular. You can still read a vanished neighborhood. You just need to wait for April. Number 12, Sewell, the town you need a ranger to find. Most West Virginia ghost towns can be reached with a map and some persistence. Sewell requires more. To visit this former coke-producing camp in Fayette County, you first go to Babcock State Park and ask the rangers for directions. You will likely need a 4-wheel drive vehicle. The Park Service will tell you how to get there. They cannot guarantee you'll find it. Sewell specialized in converting coal into coke using large beehive-shaped ovens, a process requiring temperatures above 600 degrees Celsius. When demand for that product collapsed, the town had nothing else to offer. The last resident left in 1973. 70 beehive oven remnants are still at the site. a natural spring still runs from the hillside. The same one the community drank from. No trail, no sign. Ask a ranger first. Number 11, Quinemont, where it all began. Jacob Smith settled here in 1827, making Quinemont the oldest European settled community in the entire New River Gorge. Then, in 1873, this is where coal was first shipped from these mountains by rail. The first load. The beginning of an industry that would reshape southern Appalachia entirely. Today, driving past on WV-41, you would not know any of that. CSX switching yards, overgrown hillsides, ruins of churches that were built racially segregated and have never been otherwise. Here's the wild part. After Joseph Bury, the man who shipped that first coal load, died, his fellow operators pooled roughly $30,000 to erect a stone obelisk in his honor. Then they positioned it facing the New River and the railroad. Its back is to the road. Summer foliage hides it entirely. Most people who have driven that highway 100 times have never seen it. 500 people once lived here. The obelisk is still in the trees, looking the wrong way. Number 10, Caperton, the town that crossed a river on a wire. Caperton was founded in 1880, and the problem was immediate. Rich coal seams ran under both sides of the New River, but there was no bridge. Rather than choose one bank, the engineers built two entirely separate transport systems at once. North side, a 1,460-foot inclined track running down the canyon wall, carrying loaded coal cars to the railroad below. South side, an aerial cable system that carried coal cars physically across the river itself. Suspended in air, over whitewater, on cable. Over 500 people lived at Caperton at peak, and 212 coke ovens processed the coal. By 1919, 39 years after founding, half the population was already gone. Caperton was completely abandoned in 1954. The cables are gone, the incline is gone, the ovens are gone. Nothing is accessible by marked trail. What's worth holding on to? Coal cars moving through air above whitewater on cable because someone decided the engineering was worth it. Then everyone decided it wasn't and left. Number 9, Winona, the ghost town that gave America. Black History Month. Start with the person, not the place. Carter G. Woodson was born in 1875 in Virginia, the child of formerly enslaved parents. He worked the coal mines of the New River Gorge for years, at Nuttleburg, 5 miles down Keeney's Creek from here, to earn money for his education. Then, in 1897, he returned to Winona to teach at a school the black miners here had built with their own wages for their own children. The coal companies didn't control the surface rights at Winona, which meant independent businesses could exist, which meant this community had already built something outside company authority. Woodson found, in the tea room of a Civil War veteran named Oliver Jones, a reading circle where the history of African Americans was discussed and argued after every shift. He later founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915. In 1926, he launched Negro History Week, which became Black History Month. By 1900, Winona had 850 residents. Today it's a living ghost town, occupied homes, an active church, abandoned storefronts, pool hall ruins. The school the community built for itself is long gone. The legacy of what was learned and discussed inside it is not. Black History Month began, in a real sense, in a coal camp in the mountains of West Virginia. If this is the kind of history you didn't know you were missing, hit like and subscribe. We're halfway through, and the entries from here forward are the ones that stayed with me longest. Number 8, Gary, the town where U.S. Steel ran everything, then left. In 1901, J.P. Morgan's United States Steel Corporation entered McDowell County with one plan: build a model city in the mountain hollows. By the 1940s, Gary Hollow contained 12 company towns, nearly 15,000 residents, 27 churches, 10 company stores, 9 elementary schools, a bowling alley, a bakery, a country club, and a dairy farm supplying fresh milk to the entire community. During World War II, Gary produced roughly a quarter of all coal used by U.S. Steel for the war effort. In 1923, the U.S. Coal Commission awarded Gary 90 out of 100 points for cleanliness and urban amenities, among the highest scores any company town in the country had received. A 1915 mining report noted a workforce of nearly equal numbers of white and black workers alongside Hungarian, Romanian, Italian, Polish, and Slavic miners, a dozen nations in a handful of mountain hollows. Gary wasn't formally incorporated as a city until 1971, one of the last company-owned towns in West Virginia to govern itself. In March 1983, U.S. Steel laid off 500 miners in a single day. By year's end, all underground mines in Gary were closed. The unemployment rate reached 90%, officially the highest of any municipality in the United States that year. The 2020 census counted 762 people, down from 15,000. A company built this, scored it 90 out of 100, supplied it with milk, then walked away. Number 7. Bramwell, America's most millionaires per square foot. The janitor of the Bank of Bramwell used to push payroll cash through the streets in a wheelbarrow, not a metaphor. A literal wheelbarrow, loaded with cash, rolled through a small West Virginia town to the train station on payday. There was that much money moving through Bramwell. Established in 1888 along a horseshoe bend of the Bluestone River in Mercer County, the town held more millionaires per capita than any other place in the United States by the late 1800s, somewhere between 14 and 19, depending on the account. 14 Norfolk and Western passenger trains stopped here every day. The Bank of Bramwell financed Burning Tree Country Club in Washington, D.C., and sold more World War I Liberty bonds per capita than any financial institution in the country. The richest man in town, I.T. Mann, was worth over $86 million. The Cooper House had 24 rooms, a copper roof imported from England, and an indoor pool. The original pharmacy was one of the first stores in America to sell Chanel No. 5. Coal prices fell. The Depression hit. The millionaires went to cities. The mansions stayed. 277 people live in Bramwell now. The pharmacy soda fountain still works. The high school sports teams are still called the Millionaires. The name survived everything. Number 6, Stotesbury, the senator's ghost town. Stand at the edge of this Raleigh County coal town, and you can see two churches facing each other across more than 100 years. The E. White Coal Company built both of them in 1918, one for white workers, one for black workers. St. John's Baptist Church was constructed specifically and solely for the town's African American community, a physical act of segregation written into the town's layout by corporate decision. Robert C. Byrd, who went on to serve 8 terms in the U.S. Senate, becoming one of the longest-serving senators in American history, with a publicly documented and complicated racial history, grew up here while both churches were standing. The mines changed hands 5 times over roughly 90 years. White Mountain LLC, the final operator, declared bankruptcy in 2002, ending a century of coal mining in a single year. St. John's Baptist Church was eventually listed as an endangered building by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Preservation efforts were discussed. Before anything could happen, a storm caved in the roof. By 2013, only the foundation stones remained. The Stotesbury Community Church, built for white miners in the same year by the same company, still holds services. Both buildings were put up for the same reason, at the same time, by the same people. One of them is still standing. Number 5. Bury, the Hermit of the Vanished Mansion. Joseph Bury built a $100,000 mansion in the New River Gorge, 23 rooms, stone gardens, a swimming pool, greenhouses. He had a nearby creek re-engineered to flow beneath the house in summer for natural cooling, then return to its original path in winter. On Sunday evenings, he hired orchestras and brought them up the gorge on railroad flat cars to perform on the lawn. This was a coal town in a West Virginia mountain hollow. By 1925, the mines were played out and the town was gone. The Bury family held on in the mansion until 1936. Then they left too. Around 1960, a woman named Melcenia Fields moved into the ruins. She lived alone for over 20 years, no electricity, no plumbing, as the structures deteriorated around her. When she grew too frail to walk the miles to Thurmond for groceries, the railroad workers found their own solution. They started making sure that bags of coal accidentally fell from the trains in front of her door. They left grocery bundles at the tracks without being asked and without saying anything. In 1982, a train crew noticed the delivery had gone unclaimed. They found her body. Nobody has lived at Bury since. A flood in 2001 buried what remained of the mansion under rubble. The creek Bury redirected is still out there, running the old path. No one left to change it. Number 4. Dun Glen, the ghost town nobody could find. The coal company placed this operation approximately 700 feet above the New River, near Thurmond, reachable only through a 1,250-foot incline tramway and some primitive wagon roads. Mining opened around 1904 or 1905. The last resident may have left around 1935. After that, Dun Glen simply ceased to be accessible. For decades, the National Park Service knew the site existed. Few staff had actually been there. Andrew Steele, a GIS specialist with the Park Service, and among the few people to have visited the ruins in recent years, described searching for the cemetery as a matter of standing quietly and looking carefully until field stones and a rusted metal marker came into view. It took him several tries. Most of the graves appear to be children's, deaths before 1920, from the years the town was active, but there is at least one adult burial. A woman, near the end of her life, asked specifically to be buried at Dun Glen, a place that had been empty for decades, that barely anyone could reach. Volunteers carried her coffin up the mountain to honor the request. In 2018, the National Park Service finished cutting a trail to the site. A stone powder house, some foundation remnants, and a cemetery that took a trained specialist multiple attempts to locate. There are places people choose to return to even when they're gone. Dun Glen is apparently one of them. Number 3. Nuttleburg, Henry Ford's mountain mine. The coal tipple is still standing. That's where to begin. Drive the narrow one-lane road into the gorge, and it appears from the trees at the Keeney Creek confluence, a large industrial structure, intact, maintained by the National Park Service, one of the most complete coal processing artifacts remaining in West Virginia. John Nuttall opened his first mine here in 1870. He was English, had worked coal since he was 11 years old, had emigrated in 1849 with very little, and spent decades moving from factory work to land speculation to coal empire. By the 1870s, Nuttleburg was shipping smokeless bituminous coal to industrial cities. The town was racially segregated, white miners west of Short Creek, black workers on the eastern hillsides. Standard for the era and the region. Here's the detail that stays with you. Carter G. Woodson, the man who would later create Black History Month, worked in these mines as a young man, earning money for his education. He described the reading circle that formed in the tea room of Civil War veteran Oliver Jones. Miners gathering after shifts, discussing African American history, building something that had no institutional form yet. Woodson left for school. In 1912, he became the second African American to earn a doctorate from Harvard. He launched Negro History Week in 1926. In 1919, Henry Ford leased Nuttleburg's mines for his Fordson Coal Company and modernized the tipple and conveyor system. A brick sidewalk from the original town is still at the site. The Nuttall family gave everything to the National Park Service in 1998. The tipple Ford upgraded is still standing in the trees. Woodson worked below it. Both things happened here in the same place at the same structure. Number 2. Kmore. The mine you have to earn. You park at the trailhead and walk a mile. Then you find the stairs. 821 of them descending into the New River Gorge to a site 560 feet below. At the bottom, Kmore Bottom. The Lowmore Iron Company established Kmore in 1899, naming it for the mine's first superintendent, James K. Between 1900 and 1962, this mine extracted exactly 16,904,321 tons of coal from the Sewell seam. The first shipment went out on August 23, 1900. Records were kept precisely because coal was money and money was counted. At peak in 1923, around 560 people lived at Kmore across 2 settlements, Kmore Top at the gorge rim, Kmore Bottom near the river, connected by a steam-powered mountain haulage system. Up to 800 miners worked at once. Many were African-American migrants from the South. Others were European immigrants recruited directly from Ellis Island. They were paid partly in cash, partly in scrip, company currency redeemable only at the company store. Kmore Bottom was abandoned in 1952. A fire destroyed most of what remained in 1960. The mine kept running until 1962, the last coal operation in the entire New River Gorge. The safety sign boards were never removed, the foreman's accident tracking records, the warning notices posted for miners, all still hanging in the ruins, faded and weathered, addressed to men who stopped reading them over 60 years ago. Nobody expected the closure to be permanent, so nobody cleaned out. The 821 stairs are NPS maintained now. The warnings are still up. They just have no one left to warn. Number 1, Thurmond, the town. With a 14-year poker game and a 5-person government, you enter Thurmond the only way you can. Across a single-track railroad bridge over the New River, on a road 1 lane wide. The road climbs the hill behind town, runs parallel to the tracks 150 feet above street level, then drops back down beside them. When you arrive, the railroad main line is immediately in front of the buildings. There is no street between the storefronts and the tracks. There never was. The gorge is that narrow. The buildings are preserved, brick, early 1900s, original storefronts, 20 or more of them in a continuous row. The 1904 depot is a National Park Service visitor center now. When a freight train comes through, it comes close enough to feel. 5 people live here. All of them hold elected office. Thurmond is the least populous incorporated municipality in West Virginia. Captain William Thurmond received the 73 acres that became this town in 1873 as payment for a surveying job, reportedly in lieu of $20 in cash. The Chesapeake and Ohio Railway ran through the gorge that same year. By 1910, Thurmond was generating $4.8 million in annual freight revenue, 10 times more than Richmond, more than twice as much as Cincinnati. 15 passenger trains a day, 95,000 passengers a year through a town with no road access until 1921. The founder banned alcohol from his land. His business rival Thomas McKell responded by building a 100-room hotel directly across the river in 1901. The Dun Glen Hotel became nationally known. It also became notorious for hosting a poker game that ran continuously for 14 years, claimed by Ripley's Believe It or Not to be the world's longest. The hotel burned down under suspicious circumstances in 1930. Then came diesel locomotives, which had no use for coal and water coaling stops. Then the Depression closed the banks. Then fires. Then the National Park Service purchasing what remained, 1 parcel at a time. In 2005, when Thurmond needed to fill its elected offices, 6 of its 7 residents ran for office. More candidates than voters. Amtrak's Cardinal Line still stops at Thurmond on certain days. Occasionally, someone steps off the train. They find preserved storefronts, a ranger station in the old depot, the foundation of the Dunglen Hotel in the trees across the river, a poker game that outlasted the town that hosted it, a government of 5 people managing a city of 5 people in a place where the only road crosses a railroad bridge. That is not a ghost town in any conventional sense. Thurmond is something stranger, a fully functioning American municipality where almost no one operates. The trains come, the government meets. 5 people hold together the legal identity of a place the 20th century finished. West Virginia's mountain hollows gave the country coal, steel, and a significant piece of its industrial century. These towns are what that transaction ultimately cost, in brick, in rubble, in spring daffodils still blooming from empty ground. For me, it's Bury, a woman living alone in a vanished coal empire, quietly supplied by railroad workers who dropped groceries from passing trains without saying a word. That one doesn't leave. Which of these surprised you most? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more forgotten places like these, subscribe. There are plenty more where this came from.